today, first of all. We love you back. We love you right back. We want to start off today, of course, recognizing International Women's Day. To all the powerful ladies and gender non-conforming femmes out there, we're here for you. Thank you for changing the world. I also want to start off today by acknowledging and thanking Reverend Jesse Jackson for his endorsement of Senator Bernie Sanders for president. And I want to start with that because I want to talk a little bit about the significance of Reverend Jackson's endorsement, because if we don't know where we're coming from, it's a little harder to figure out where we're going. Reverend Jesse Jackson ran for president long before it was popular to champion progressive causes in the way that it is today. He fought for health care as a human right. He fought for the end of endless wars. And no one expected him to surge at the polls in 1984. But then he won Nevada. And the powerful and moneyed and conservative parts of our politics began to scramble. They began to panic. Because what he started to do was put together a rainbow coalition of everyday Americans to fight for our common cause. A rainbow coalition to fight for racial justice, for economic justice, for human rights. And politics like that have always been deemed unelectable in this country. But he almost got it. And I want to talk a little bit because in 1984, Reverend Jackson delivered a speech known as the David and Goliath speech. And he said, it's time for a new course, a new coalition of new leadership, a choice, a chance. Now, listen to this. This was his analysis back then in 1984, that Reagan won not by genius. He won while we were asleep. He won by the margin of despair. He won by the fracture of our coalition, by the margin of racial division. He won by default. Does that sound familiar, Michigan? And he closed with the story of a little shepherd boy named David, where everyone was scared of Goliath. Michigan, we have Goliaths in our country today. The Goliath of the fossil fuel industry, the Goliath of big pharma, the Goliath of the role of big money in politics. These are powerful, powerful forces. And we are David. We are David. David, all of us, the little guys, what David had to do before he confronted Goliath was to shed his unnecessary clothes. This is something that Jackson discussed in his speech. And I want us to recognize this moment that we're in on the eve of Tuesday, what we have to shed in order to grow. Because in order for us to grow, in order for us to win, we have to grow. We have to grow. We must be inclusive. We must bring more people into this movement. We must shed the unnecessary clothes of cynicism and exclusion. And we must turn towards an embracing posture where all people are welcome into a people's movement of the United States of America to establish free health care, to establish Medicare for all, to fight for a living wage, to demand humanity at our border. That is what this movement is all about, Michigan. win. We have a choice to make. In November, we will do everything we can to defeat that margin of despair. We will do everything we can to defeat that margin of despair. The question is how? Will we defeat it by going back to how things were? Or will we defeat it by fighting for working people in every corner and every pocket of the United States of America, from the South Bronx to Ann Arbor to El Paso? We have to make sure that we win this by fighting for someone we don't know. So the key is, all of us need to go to the polls and bring 5 people with us on Tuesday. I spoke with Reverend Jackson today. I called him and I asked him, I said, Reverend, if you were to share something with the folks in Ann Arbor today, what would you share with them? And here is what he told me to pass along. He said, tell them that we have survived apart. Now we must learn how to live together. We have survived apart. We must learn how to live together. This moment, we are here because we have been separated from each other. As Sister Rashida Tlaib here in Michigan says, we are not divided, we are disconnected. That is at its core our problem today. And that means that the antithesis of that is to connect, to fight for someone you don't know, to love our neighbor, to bring people into the cause, to listen, to adapt, to open a posture of acceptance. That is what we must do in order to win on Tuesday. The Reverend said one more thing, that it is coalitions that win big victories. Coalitions that win big victories. So ask yourselves, who are we building coalitions with? How am I coalition building today? And I want to leave you with a story. Because as Reverend Jackson was running, he came to the state of Michigan and he won. He won the state of Michigan. And at this point, some of the most powerful and conservative parts of the party really began to panic. And then, shortly after Michigan, came several more caucuses. And there was a mayor of a small city called Burlington, Vermont, in 1984, who had won a shocking victory to the mayoral seat. And it was time for the Vermont caucuses to come around. And Mayor Sanders stood up to break with the common consensus and endorse Reverend Jesse Jackson for president. He stood up and delivered that speech in the Vermont caucuses. He was yelled at. He was hit. But he said, this is our opportunity to bring millions of working people into our political process and transform who America can work for. Michigan, I am here supporting Senator Bernie Sanders for president because when I ran just 2 years ago, when we first started, it was profoundly lonely. No one was on our side. No one. Even the Women's Equality Party endorsed a man over me. But you know who was there early? The people. the people's movement. And the movement of not me, us was there early. When it did not seem likely, you were there early. When it seemed improbable, you knocked on doors. When it seemed like didn't make any political convenient, or it was not politically convenient to challenge a powerful member within their own party, you were there knocking doors, because we knew that what was most important was establishing Medicare for all, tuition-free public colleges and universities, and more. Michigan and Ann Arbor, on Tuesday, this is our moment. The time is now. The time is now. And what started and what echoed earlier, what we often say is that history often may not repeat itself, but it does rhyme. It does rhyme. And on Tuesday, we can change, we can do this again, we can change, and we can end that stanza. Because we can elect Senator Bernie Sanders for President of the United States. So with that, I want to thank you all for being here. We love you back. Ask yourself and make your list. Make your list of the 5 people you're going to bring with you at the polls on Tuesday. And with that, I'd like to introduce to you Senator Bernie Sanders.
Whoa, I cannot believe how many people are here. Thanks all for coming out. And let me thank all of those who have spoken earlier. Let me thank Anna Gomulka. Let me thank Laura Jane Grass of Against Me. Let me thank Arden Shapiro, Michelle Dietrich, Leila Hamani, State Senator Jeff Irwin, State Representative Yusuf Rabbi, Abdul El Sayed. And let me thank one of the outstanding members of the United States Congress, a young woman who has helped to transform politics in America today, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Now today, I have to say, has been a very interesting and moving day for me, and I'll tell you why. Earlier in the day, we were in Grand Rapids, and we had a whole lot of people, and I don't think as many as we had here tonight. But I had with me somebody who I have known for over 30 years, and that is the Reverend Jesse Jackson. And I don't know how much many of you know about Reverend Jackson, but he is one of the true heroes of modern America. And why today is interesting to me is seeing Alexandria up here tonight and Jesse Jackson up earlier. We see the arc of justice that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. talked about. When Jesse Jackson was a young man, and he's about my age, 28, when he was a young man growing up in South Carolina, he went to segregated schools. When he was a young man, African Americans in his community could not vote, could not go to the movie theater. And like many young people of his time, he stood up and he fought back. And throughout his career, he did many, many things. And now I look at a young woman like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and I think, what are the struggles that she is going to be engaging in, and people of her generation, over the next 30, 40, 50 years? All right? And what history is about is to understand that there have been extraordinarily brave people throughout history, people who have put their lives on the line, sometimes who have died, gone to jail in the struggle for justice. And that is what this campaign is about. That is what Jesse Jackson's life has been about. That's what Alexandria's life is about. And that is what I hope all of your lives will be about. Nelson Mandela, one of the great heroes in modern history, said something that was very profound and appropriate for today. And he said, "Everything seems impossible until it is done." Everything seems impossible until it is done. In other words, if we were here 70 years ago and somebody said, "You know what? The day will come when we'll have an African-American president," people would have said, "Don't be ridiculous. Don't be crazy. It'll never happen. America is too racist a country." The day will come when gay marriage will be legal in America. Don't be crazy. That will never happen. The day will come when we'll have women governors and senators all over this country. Don't be crazy. That can't happen. Point is that throughout history, the major impediment to progress is not just a very powerful ruling class. Today, our campaign, we're taking on Wall Street. We're taking on the insurance companies. We're taking on the drug companies. We're taking on the fossil fuel industry. We're taking on the military-industrial complex. We're taking on the prison industrial complex. Now, those people have enormous wealth and enormous power. But you know what? They are not the major impediment to progress. The major impediment is the limitations of our own imagination. If you believe that you will never earn a decent wage or a decent salary, if you believe you're not entitled to a living wage, you will never get a living wage. If you believe that you got to go deeply into debt simply because you want to get a good education, you will go deeply into debt. If you believe you should not be able to afford health care, you're never going to have the health care that you need. If you believe that we cannot save this planet from the ravages of climate change, this planet is doomed. So what this campaign is about is what Nelson Mandela talked about. And that is, we are capable of making sweeping change if we have the courage to do it. And the history of real change in America, as all of you know, is when people at the grassroots stand up and fight for justice. Change never takes place from the top on down, always from the bottom on up. That is the history of the labor movement in America. That is the history of the civil rights movement in America. That is the history of the women's movement in America. That is the history of the gay rights movement in America. That is the history of the environmental movement in this country and around the world. So right now, in this moment, we have got to look around us, and what we have got to determine is whether we are satisfied with the status quo. Are we satisfied with an economy in which 3 people own more wealth than the bottom half of America? Are we satisfied with an economy in which the top 1% owns more wealth than the bottom 92%? Are we satisfied with an economy when half of our people are living paycheck to paycheck and 49% of all new income goes to the top 1%? Are we satisfied with a political system in which billionaires buy elections? Well, if we are not satisfied, what we need is an agenda that works for all of us and an agenda that we are prepared to fight for. Now, what Jesse Jackson has said for decades and what Alexandria has said is that we cannot allow Trump and other demagogues to divide us up based on the color of our skin, based on where we were born, based on our sexual orientation, based on our religion, or our gender. That's what demagogues always do. They divide the people up and they pick on a minority. Sometimes the minority are African Americans. Sometimes they're Latinos. Sometimes they're Asian. Sometimes they're Jews. Sometimes abroad they're gypsies. You pick on a minority and you rally the American people or people around the world to hate. Our campaign is exactly the opposite. Our campaign is bringing people together, black and white and Latino, Native American, Asian American, gay and straight, around a movement based on love, compassion, and dignity. That is what we are fighting for. And if we do not allow Trump to divide us up, if, as Alexandria reminded you, you get your friends involved in the political process, there is no stopping us. And there's no stopping us because we have an agenda that works for working people, not just the billionaire class. We believe that if you work 40 hours a week, you should not live in poverty. We're going to raise that minimum wage at least $15 an hour. We believe that workers have a right to join unions. And we're going to make it easier for workers to join unions. We believe that women deserve equal pay for equal work. We believe that we could put millions of workers to work at good-paying union jobs by rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure. We don't need water systems that poison children like in Flint, Michigan. We don't need crumbling schools in Detroit and all over America. We believe in education. And as president, we are going to change national priorities and put education way up there at the top of the list. And if you think big and not small, you ask yourselves a few questions. How does it happen that we have a dysfunctional child care system in America where working families cannot find good quality, affordable child care? We're going to change that with high quality, affordable, universal child care. We're going to triple funding for low-income Title I schools. And because we believe in education, we believe in teachers. And I hope many of you who are in college or graduate school will give thought to becoming teachers. We need great teachers. And when we talk about education, what we mean is that K through 12, free public education, K through 12, is not good enough anymore. 4 years ago, I talked about making public colleges and universities like this one tuition-free. And people said that was a radical, crazy idea. Well, all over the country, states, cities, communities are moving to free public colleges and universities. And as president, that is exactly what we will do in every state in this country. And if Congress, against my vote, could bail out the crooks on Wall Street, and if Trump and his friends could give $1 trillion in tax breaks to the 1%, together we can cancel all student debt in America. And when you think big and not small, when you think about the country you want to live in, you ask yourself, how does it happen that the United States of America is the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people as a human right? We're going to end that embarrassment. We are going to pass a Medicare for all single-payer program. And you know what that means? This is what it means. No more premiums. No more co-payments. No more deductibles. No more out-of-pocket expenses. And because we're going to take on the greed and corruption of the pharmaceutical industry, nobody in America pays more than $200 a year for the prescription drugs they need. Now, this is an example. Can we do this? Of course we can. All right, every other country, I live 50 miles away from the Canadian border. They've done this for decades. Europe has done it. Scandinavia has done it. But we have got to take on the power of the healthcare industry, which last year made $100 billion in profits. So tonight we say loudly and clearly, the function of a rational and humane healthcare system is to guarantee quality care to all, not to make billions in profits for the drug companies and the insurance companies. Now, we've got a president who embarrasses us every day. But he is also endangering not only the United States, but the entire world when he continues to believe that climate change is a hoax. Well, some of us believe that Donald Trump is a hoax. And unlike Trump, our administration will believe and rest on science. And what the scientists are telling us, as all of you know, is that unless we act aggressively, the planet that we will leave our children and grandchildren will be increasingly unhealthy and uninhabitable. And that is why I am proud to tell you that our campaign has introduced the most sweeping climate change proposal ever introduced by a federal candidate. Yes, we will take on the fossil fuel industry. Yes, we will create 20 million good-paying union jobs. Yes, we will pass legislation based on the principles of the Green New Deal. And yes, because we know climate change is not just an American issue, but a global issue, we are going to lead the world and talk to the people in China, in Russia, India, Pakistan, Brazil, countries all over the world, and make the case that maybe, just maybe, instead of spending $1.8 trillion a year on weapons of destruction designed to kill each other, maybe we should pool our resources, fight our common enemy, which is climate change. And when we talk about issues we cannot any longer sweep under the rug, we need major reforms to a broken and racist criminal justice system. We are going to invest in our young people in jobs and education, not jails and incarceration. We're going to end private prisons and detention centers. And we are going to end the so-called war on drugs. Turns out that through executive order, the President of the United States can legalize marijuana in every state in America. And that is exactly what I will do. And we're also going to move to expunge the records of those arrested for marijuana. And when we talk about broken and racist systems in America, we're going to bring sweeping reform to our immigration system. I am the son of an immigrant, and I will not tolerate the demonization of immigrants that exists right now. On day one, we will restore, through executive order, the legal status of 1.8 million young people eligible for DACA. We will end a border policy which today allows federal agents to snatch babies from the arms of their mothers. We will end the ICE raids that are terrorizing communities all across America. And we will pass bipartisan, comprehensive immigration reform and a path towards citizenship. All of us, no matter what our political view might be, are horrified and disgusted by the level of gun violence in America. Our administration will fight for the most sweeping, comprehensive gun safety legislation in the history of this country. And we're talking about, among many other things, universal background checks. People who have violent histories, including domestic violence, should not own guns. We're going to end the gun show loophole. And we will do what the American people want us to do, and that is end the sale and distribution of assault weapons in this country. Now, as a United States Senator, I hear a lot of speeches on the floor of the Senate from conservative Republicans. You're booing, I got to listen to them, you know. And what their mantra is that they supposedly believe in small government and supposedly believe that you got to get the government off the backs of the American people. That's their mantra. Well, I say to those hypocrites that if you believe in getting the government off the backs of the American people, understand that it is women who have a right to control their own bodies, not the government. So my promise to you tonight, I will never nominate anybody to the Supreme Court or the federal bench who is not 100% pro Roe v. Wade. Trump and his friends want to cut funding for Planned Parenthood. Well, we've got some bad news for them because we're going to expand funding for Planned Parenthood. The simple truth here is that in America, it must be women who control their own bodies, not the government. So here we are, a few days before a major primary here in Michigan. And we are taking on in this campaign not just Joe Biden, we're taking on the 60 billionaires who are funding his campaign. We're taking on the Wall Street executives who are helping to fund his campaign. We're taking on the corporate establishment. We're taking on the political establishment. We're going to win this election. See, it is, and I understand that Joe Biden has the support of the entire political establishment. I got that. But we have the support of some of the strongest grassroots movements in this country. We have the support of some of the best unions in this country. And I would 100 times over prefer to have grassroots support than establishment support. So Tuesday is a very, very important day, and Michigan is the most important state coming up on Tuesday. So I'm here tonight to just repeat what Alexandria said a few moments ago. And that is, we need you to come out to vote or to vote early. We need you to bring out your friends and families and coworkers. Tell your friends that you're tired of them complaining about high tuition and student debt and lack of health care and low wages and unaffordable housing. Tell them to stop complaining and to stand up and fight back. So let us go forward on Tuesday. Let's win here in Michigan. Let us win the Democratic nomination. And together, let us defeat Donald Trump. Thank you all very much.